this week we're going to cover shadows, just very quickly being able to make them. Um, Anytime you bring an object in, right, to a composition, you want to be able to ground it. You can paint shadows in, but there are faster ways to do this, so I'm going to show you a couple of them. So for example, if I had this toaster and it was sitting on top of a countertop, okay, and I wanted to put a shadow underneath to ground it, I could paint a shadow in, make a new layer. Honestly, a lot of times, just easier. Again, the toaster's on its own layer. So I'm just going to kind of select the bottom of it. Okay. And I'm going to Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V, and I'm going to paste. So essentially, I just copied that part of it. Pull underneath the toaster, grab my move tool, kind of slide it into place. Okay. Yeah, something like that. Now what I want to do is I'm going to fill this with black, and I'm going to make it blurry, and I'm going to trim this little part off. Okay. A couple different ways you can do this. Sometimes the easiest for me, I just lock the transparent pixels, shift backspace, fill it with black, unlock your transparent pixels. Okay. Grab my move tool, kind of move it into place a little bit. Now what I do want to be aware of right here, okay, is this foot would touch, so I don't want too much of a shadow underneath of it. So let me drop the opacity on this so you can see. Okay. So a lot of times I'll say go ahead and use a layer mask. Okay. But in this case, honestly, it's just easier just to trim this a little bit off with an eraser. Okay. Now let me go ahead and grab there we go, hard round. Just like that. Then all I'm going to do is go to Filter, Blur. I'm going to choose Gaussian Blur. And something right around 2, probably going to be pretty good. Okay. And then all I'm going to do is just kind of move it up into place, and there we go. Okay, so again, doing this takes you, 10-15 seconds when you get used to it. So super fast, super easy. Let me go on to the next one, which is this one. Now, in order to put this person into the scene, what I want to do is give them a cast shadow. There's light coming from the front left, okay? So I want to make a cast shadow going back. So again, I could paint one in. That would take me a long time when all I have to do is copy that layer. So you can either drag it down to the new layer button or hit Control J or Command J, depending on what you're on, okay? Again, lock the transparent pixels, Shift backspace, Shift delete to fill it with black. Okay, unlock your transparent pixels, pull it behind, right, the boy copy. I'm going to grab my move tool. I want to make sure I'm on the shadow that I just created, the boy copy layer. Hit Command T. Now, if you hold, or Control T, if you hold Command or Control right up at this center middle one right here, okay, oops. What I'll be able to do is go ahead and just pull this straight down. Okay, so it skews it. All right, so here we have it falling behind him. I'm going to hold down Command or Control, and I'm just going to play with this a little bit. All right, because if the cast shadow gets further away from him, obviously it's going to get a little bit smaller. So again, I'm holding Command or Control, okay, pulling that into place. Here we go. Hit Return. It's got a cast shadow. I am going to reduce the opacity. Okay, and then again, go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay, it's as simple as that, right? Blur it as much as you want. You can also, if you want to, grab your blur tool, which is right where your smudge tool is. Okay, and you can always, as a cast shadow gets further away from an object, the edges get blurrier. Okay, so depending on how realistic you really want this to be, I would suggest if you really want to make it realistic, the closer a cast shadow is to an object, the stronger the shadow is, and the crisper the edges are. The further away it gets, the more blurry that shadow gets, and the lighter it gets as well. Okay, so if I really wanted to do that, I would lock the transparent pixels again on this. I would grab my gradient tool. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set my layer mode to multiply because I'm going to pull from dark to white. Okay, and I'm just going to follow the path of the cast shadow. Okay. Something like, I'll usually try it a couple times. Yeah, something like that. It's pretty good. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and put my opacity back up a bit. Okay. And there we go. Now we have a cast shadow that really follows what happens in real life. Okay. Now, if there's a wall that's closer, okay, if this cast shadow is hitting this wall, it's going to go up the wall, right? It's not going to go straight through. So I'm going to go ahead and lock my layer again. Let me zoom in. All I'm going to do is grab my rectangular marquee tool, make sure I'm on my shadow layer, my boy copy, and I just want to make sure I get, just going to kind of move this into place. I want to get fairly close on this just because I'm going to transform it. So I have a little more space. Let me move it like kind of like that. There we go. Okay, now all I'm going to do is hit Command T. And I'm going to transform this part of it. I'm going to hold down Command or Control T, sorry. And I'm going to grab the corners again. Okay, and this top middle. And it's going to take a little bit of finagling. All right, let me take a step back and look. Yep, there we go. So now it's going up the wall. Okay. If I break anything down here, I will just come back in and paint it back in. Okay. All right, so for the final one, this one's a little more advanced. What I want to do is make it look like there's a window across from this wall, right? So I'm going to have light coming in through a window. I have already given you in the file this, okay? Think about like crossbars on a window. So what I want to do first is I want to transform this so it fits with the window and what the window would look like if it's directly across. And what I mean by that is you see how you have these lines going in perspective. Okay, I'm going to hold down Command or Control and I want to pull it on the corners. And you can move it around a little bit. I just want to make sure these follow the perspective, okay, of the wall so it doesn't look completely ridiculous. If you want to maintain your aspect ratio of it going straight up and down, just hold down Shift, okay, as you do this. So Control plus Shift or Command plus Shift. Okay, to something like that. Hit Return. Okay, now I'm going to use this to go ahead and make my light. Now, the background is already fairly light, so I don't want to lighten this area. What I want to do is darken the surrounding area. Okay, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a new layer. Okay. And if you want, you can call this shadow, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to Command or Control click on the light layer to load it as a selection. Now, with the light coming through, okay, it's going to be slightly more rounded around the edges, okay, and a little more diffuse. So I could blur this afterwards, but just to give you another tool you can use, I'm going to change the selection itself. So I'm going to go to Select, Modify, and I'm going to feather that selection. I don't think any more than 8 pixels is probably what you want. Okay, I'm going to turn off the light layer. Can you see how my rectangles now are kind of rounded? Now what I want to do is fill the surrounding area with the dark, right? So I need to invert my selection. Boy, I can talk. So to Select, Modify, okay, nope, sorry, Select, because I don't go through this very often, Inverse. I usually use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command or Control, Shift-I. Okay, and now I'm going to fill this, hit Shift, Backspace or Shift-Delete, and fill it with black, and deselect. And you see how we already have the window? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and drop my opacity down quite a bit. Okay. Now, one of the things you will notice is that if there was cast shadow on this wall, right, it would go around some of these objects. Okay. The easiest way to transform this in this case, and we haven't used this before, is to use Liquify. And Liquify is a fun tool. We're going to use more of it next week. So I'm going to go to Filter, Liquify. And that will take me to my dialog box here. right? Now what you have here is your forward warp tool. So if I click and drag, okay, I can warp things around. Okay. You also have your reconstruct tool. So let's say if I do this, and I just want to keep this, okay, I can come in and any one area, the more I drag on it, okay, the more it'll reconstruct. Okay. There are also some other preset ones like twirl clockwise. Okay. You don't have to worry about that for now. If you want to play with it, knock yourself out. On the right-hand side here are some of your options. So your view option, for example, okay, we want to show the backdrop. But you want to make sure opacity is not 100%, because if you do that, okay, you can't see a preview, right? So I usually do the backdrop at like 50, something like that. I don't need to, maybe 60, okay? And all I'm going to do is come in here and, oops, make sure I'm on my forward warp tool, not my twist, okay? I'm just going to push up, and this works the same as your brush, by the way. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and push up as far as like using the brackets to move around things. Okay. So for example here, it would definitely, I want to move this in a little bit. Okay. Because it would definitely fall across this buffet here. Okay. And I want to be consistent in the application of what I do. By the way, if you make your window and one of the some of the shade hits right here, like you're going to have to, I would use a layer mask and knock that out just because you wouldn't see the shadow on that light. Okay. Okay, same thing on the chair here. It's going to follow this curve, right? So I'm just going to kind of push it into place a little bit. Okay, something like that. Now over here at the top, okay, your density and your pressure. So my pressure is at 100, right? So if I grab something and click, it's going to do that. If you're having problems and it's moving too far, right, you can always drop your pressure some so that it does it less, okay? So either way, whatever works for you, okay? By the way, next week we'll cover the face-aware liquify, which is a lot of fun, right? Once I have something that looks like it's following the light, okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right. Now, obviously, I would spend more time if I was doing this. Now, the last thing I'm going to do, okay, is I want to warm up this light that's coming in. Okay. So, and I want it to look like, now I've just distorted all these squares, right? So I want the light to be following the square shape, not the shadows, and right? So I want to go ahead and load this once I'm done as a selection, and I'm going to go ahead and invert it, Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, because again, I want the squares of light, I don't want the shadow. And I'm going to make a new curves adjustment layer. If my mouse will work, there we go. Okay. And all I'm going to do is come in and add a little bit more red. Click and drag up. Okay. And I will probably drop the blue just a bit. Okay, and in the green, if I pull up just slightly on the green, okay, I don't want to do it too much. Okay. What I'm looking for is a nice warm color. So I'm going to pull up the red, pull up the green just a little bit, and drop the blue just a bit. Okay. And here's the difference, right? You see how it almost glows now? That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so on this file, go ahead, do this, play with the liquify filter, and then make sure you do your curves adjustment layer. So this last one is more complex. If you have any problems, go back through the steps, or I'll be happy to help you. All right? Good luck.